let's move a little bit towards the project that you are working in, which is the the cultural storytelling. Tell me how it started and what exactly you are aiming at with this project.
Right. So how did it start? It started from uh, I can't even coin when it started. I think it started when I was in the military and when I noticed that African people seeking their own history and their own knowledge that empowers their identity is something that's taboo for white societies. And when they see you doing it, it brings upon a fear in them. They're like, oh, okay, like she knows who she is, right? Like, so that got me intrigued with the idea of learning more, even more about myself, and not only learning about my history and finding my own narratives that were taught by my own ancestors, but getting other African people to be inspired to learn that as well. So I think it really started then once I had left the military and I started to get engaged with the content that was fulfilling me, which is learning about what my elders, what my ancestors had left me. It's not like everything that we need to do as African people has already been done and already been well documented by our elders and our ancestors who have passed away, which is a beautiful thing. So I was just trying to tap into that. But the unfortunate thing is that there's not a lot of people in our communities that are interested or that are aware of that because they don't see any benefit in it. They don't see any benefit of knowing who they are, knowing what their ancestors left them. But that's kind of what started it. And currently, with the project that I'm working on, is I'm trying to capture the narratives and the stories of indigenous people on the continent. So I was just in Ghana and I was able to understand a bit more about different ethnic groups that live there. And I was really documenting the effects of westernization and globalization on their communities. What has it changed as far as their traditions and their languages and whatever the case may be? Because I think that is an important thing to realize, that in this age of the digital era, in this age of globalization, that is having a profound impact on Africa, which a lot of people don't understand in the diaspora, and especially as it pertains to urban areas. So what I have been realizing is that, for example, in Accra, the people complain about the corrupt government system, but are also in itself emulating that government system. And I think it has to do, it's a theory of mine, that it has to do with having this, you know, this system of capitalism, right? They're trying to survive. It's literally like they're mimicking the dog eat dog complex that's going on, right? So it's really having a negative impact on the traditions of communalism and taking care of each other and all different things. And I'm assuming that this is happening across the continent in urban areas specifically, right? So I'd imagine in Lagos that that's the same issue that's going on. In Casablanca, I want to say I was in Casablanca and now I'm in Rabat. I would say that the same thing is going on, right? The neo-colonialism is having a depreciating effect on the morality of African communities.
Yeah, you correctly said that a lot of people are not interested in knowing about the history of Africa, the history of themselves, because, of course, by a lot of people, we are here referring to the African people. Now, what I'm sort of worried about is that is it possible that because of how the Africans have been reduced, for people to be talking about history sometime, you need to take care of the primary existential thing, necessities, no? You need to have food, you need to have shelter, then you can begin to talk about philosophy and some other things in the ordinary sense of it. Of course, there are some people who go against some of those things and still able to come out with something extraordinary. So if you look around nearly the whole of Africa, you see that people are barely surviving. And because they are barely surviving, I think it fits perfectly to what you are referring to as dog eat dog. In that anything can go. And if we remain on this edge of precipice, or where we are basically falling, it's just a question of who's going to get to the ground first. It becomes very difficult for people to really stand up and say, where are we really coming from? Because the basic things are not being taken care of. If you are a man, your wife and your kids don't have food to eat, you might really want to stand up for something. But because those things are there that are dragging you, it becomes very difficult. Anyway, this is just my reflection. What do you take of that? Is it that we as a people, we just naturally do not like to know about ourselves, or because we are under a situation that is making it difficult for us to know about ourselves? I'm looking at
Yeah.
Africans in general, also in the diaspora.
Yeah. So I think that okay, I'll give an example. I remember one time I was talking to a young man, and I was telling him about, I think he may have said something that had triggered me. So I was telling him about our history and what's going on with the African people. And as I was explaining it to him, he didn't debate me because he knew it was true. And he said, well, you know what? I don't want to talk about that, because once I think about it and once I talk about it, I'll be enraged, right? And that wasn't the only time I've heard about that. So I think that it's almost intentional for African people to not want to reflect on actually what's going on, because it's easier. It's easier to be docile and complacent with the situation than you're in than to fight out of fear. Like I said, it goes back to that fear complex. And I think that what's going on in the Horn of Africa and different places, honestly, is you don't have to choose a house. You don't have to choose the basic necessities or your identity or your dignity. Like, you don't have to do one or the other. You can have it both. Like, why do you have to choose? And I think the way that happens is for us to prioritize unity and community. I think a lot of things that are happening and why things are able to get away as to what's happening on the continent or within the diaspora everywhere, because there's injustice everywhere, because this globalization in the form of neocolonialism is taking an impact everywhere, whether we realize it or not. Is that we're basically we have to unify. In order for us to unify, is that we have to be able to understand what the actual issue is. What is the common denominator? The tyrannical president or person that's in power right now is just a manifestation as what happened in colonial times, and he's only an agent of a system, right? And once people are able to realize that type of information, then the argument doesn't become over my tribe is better than your tribe, or my ethnic group is over your ethnic group. It's like, nah, like this person is only one piece of the puzzle, or this argument is only one piece of the puzzle. We need to look at the grandeur, the bigger picture. And I think that can happen once you have people within the diaspora caring as to what's going on outside of their bubble, of their box that's happening. So a lot of people aren't well educated in America, at like, period. That's the statement. They're not well educated. People think that you can get proper education in America. It's not true. That's a fallacy. That's just what this is what they want you to believe. The only type of proper education you can get is the education you get for yourself. One. Two, people aren't educated as to what's happening on the continent. They may have these different stereotypes they know of, but they don't know to the intricacies as to how European countries put these types of situations in place. Like, for example, the Congo. I just wrote an article as to the case in Congo, where there's a group of people a group of families who are trying to sue these big tech companies for basically child slavery, and it's probably ongoing to this day. And like I said before, they weren't able to get prosecuted for it because there's legal codes that's protecting those types of institutions. But the reason why Congo is in such a destitute state that they're in is because the historical past as to how colonials in the past were able to use the divide and conquer technique to get the Congo in the position that it's in. So they didn't even have the resources, the human resources, or the military resources to protect themselves, right? So then they caused strife in Rwanda, and then that caused a whole nother strife to go on within Congo. So all these things are interconnected, and once we're educated on those things, it could help us better want to assist each other and want to unify with each other in order to get to the actual root of the problem and identify solutions. And that's the only way. So I look at it as this. For example, the Africans are like the door, the locked door, right? And then the other Africans in the Americas and within the diaspora is kind of like the key to that locked door. Together, they're able to open up into, and you're able to utilize that doorway to get to the next step, and then forward on to all the other doors that exist. But without each other, they're useless. It's just a locked door and a key. You understand? So if we were able to get the diaspora educated as to what's going on and get them to have an African consciousness that's centered towards unity and wanting to help each other and to empower each other, then it would be easy for the diaspora to be able to create funds to help the Horn of Africa, and not only to help, but to help themselves, to build communities together, to go far. Like, we could go far with each other, but that's the whole mentality of an African consciousness. But you only have, that's idealistic what I'm saying. So you only have a critical mass of people who will want to do that. And that's the state that we're in now. So it's going to take a much slower and gradual process.
It's going to take much slower and gradual process. Yeah, it's going to take a gradual process.